Happy Thursday, everybody, and welcome back to the Big Sew Along. Today, I had planned on showing you a couple of the items I was making from my the Diane Erickson patterns that I purchased last week. And I have a pair of Capitola pants cut out, not made. I did make a vintage Diane Erickson pattern. It's no longer available on the website. It's the Tory collection. I made this version right here. I just made it in some fabric that I had lying about because I wanted to see how I liked the pattern. And I'm going to show you really quickly. I can't try it on for you this week because I don't have the buttons on it yet. I don't know where my week went, you guys. I really don't. But it's this. I'm going to stand up so you can see a little bit better, maybe. I just used, this is a lightweight, it's like a shirting weight cotton. This shirt has a seam that goes down the center of the back sleeve. I know you can't tell, but there's a seam right here instead of like under the arm. And it has a hidden button placket, which was a little bit of a challenge for me to get together, but I like the way it came out. The only problem I really had with this is my collar. I had trouble getting my buttonholer to make buttons in the collar, and I'm not sure what that was about. So I still need to get those buttons on, those buttonholes on, and then put my buttons on that. But all in all, I really love that shirt. I will definitely be making it again. There's a tunic version too, and I would really like to make that. I got this off of eBay, and I just looked for Diane Erickson, I think, on eBay, and a bunch of stuff came up, so that was really cool. So I got my, the only other Diane Erickson thing I did was I did get my Capitola pants cut out. Now, the reason that I didn't get the rest of my Diane Erickson stuff done is because one of the ladies over in the Tina Givens, one of the Tina Givens like sewing pattern groups on Facebook, Pamela Martin Hornsby, said she was having trouble with the Macy dress. So I decided to make a Macy and see if I could help Pamela out. So I'm going to tell you a couple things. I'm wearing it today. I made this in a, I think it's a cotton linen blend. Gauze. It's like a gauzy kind of fabric. It really crinkles up a lot when you wash it. I don't know if that means anything, but a couple of things about this. It's like a lot of others. If you've made the Chantel, you will be familiar with this sort of size on this. The body's really wide. The neck on this is small, you guys, and that was not me. I didn't alter the neck. I did. And at the end of the day, I did end up taking the front of the pattern and the back of the pattern in 1.5 inches each. So that means the pattern was smaller by 3 inches in width, and the dress itself would be 6 inches smaller in circumference. When I measured it out, it was going to be like 60 some inches wide. So that was totally fine. Like making it smaller was fine. I did that because my fabric wasn't really wide enough to accommodate the sleeves. There is instructions in this pattern for making the sleeves separately, like making the dress without sleeves and then attaching them separately as opposed to the cut-on sleeve, which I did. I just didn't really feel like doing that, so I made the pattern a little bit smaller. I'm totally fine with that. Here's the thing about the neckline, though. So this is the neckline. I have 1 inch of, I bound it with jersey. So, I mean, you wouldn't necessarily, if you're just using a binding, it would be that much smaller. My binding is 1 inch, it's a linen jersey. I made my neck hole 1/2 inch lower all the way around. And that seemed to work just fine. It's still pretty close. And now that I'm looking at it on me, I'm not sure that like this super high neckline is really that great on me, but I have to say I do really love the dress. Everything else about this dress is pretty simple. The only other thing I did that isn't in the pattern is I added jersey cuffs to mine. I wanted it to be almost like a sweatshirt. And it is in fact almost like a sweatshirt. I actually really, really like this top. I'll show you in this clip here how I laid this out. The way this pattern is made, there's a front and there's a back. And you're supposed to sew them together, not just at the shoulder seams and at the sides, but also at the bottom. And then you cut a hole, like a big line, across the front about 3 inches up from the bottom. And that is where your legs go. It's a little confusing, but it's a really cute concept. However, I was thinking about it and I thought, well, what if I don't have to, I have plenty of length in my fabric. I don't really have to sew that bottom seam. Can't I just cut it all in one piece? So that's what I did. So take a look here and I'll show you really quickly how I laid out my pattern, and hopefully that'll be helpful if you want to make this pattern. I do think that it made it a little bit easier. It's just one less seam to sew, and I really like the idea of not having a seam at that particular point, because you'll see when I show the dress to you later, I think that just adds bulk to it and you don't need it there. So take a look. Okay, just so you can see my layout here, this right here is the back neck, and then I'm going straight down here. See if you can see this. This is the hem of the back. Nope, this is the hem of the back. The hem of the front is butted right up next to it, and then the front neckline is up here. So it's all one piece. Front, hem, back neckline, and then way back up here, this right here is our cutting line for the leg opening right here. So we're just going to cut the two hems butt up against each other so that we won't have a seam there. Okay, the only other thing I have video for you guys is, I think, is doing this opening at the bottom. And I will say, I mean, I think I say it again in this clip here, but I will say I did not understand these directions either. So Pamela, I get ya. I was confused. I looked really closely at the picture of the pattern on the website, and I will put that up here, and I'll blow it up so you can see the hem that I'm talking about. And it looks to me like on the jersey version, they've made the binding strips 5 inches wide instead of 3 inches wide. And they have only attached them at the top and then just let the bottom of the binding strips hang free. They are not folded under and then stitched again. I hope that makes sense. So I don't know. Yeah, honestly, you guys, I was confused by these directions. So this is the way I did it. I did it the way you kind of would like a regular bias binding, only this is wider, and it is a little bit trickier because you have a slit, which means that you have two corners that you have to get around. And anyways, take a look at this video, and hopefully that'll be helpful in some way. Okay, I'm hoping this is gonna make sense. This is the front and the back pinned together. Now, if you so this is the front, the inside of the front. This would be the hem down here, and I'm just gonna show you this part because the rest is just pinned together. I'm just gonna show it to you like this, actually. So that's my top. I have to get it down a little more. There we go. Okay, so this is the front, this is the back, right sides together. Obviously, these are the shoulders pinned and the sides pinned. And the only thing I have done already is I've attached the pockets to each side. And now, when I sew the side seams, I'll go around the pocket. So side seams and shoulders are next. But before we get that far, I wanted to go over this. So the way I cut it, you'll remember from the last clip, there was no opening at my hemline. So if you've done it, if you have cut it the same way with no, in one piece, with no opening at the hemline, it should look like this. It'll be closed at the hem, but you'll have this opening, and I'm gonna say that is about, looks like it's about 3 inches up from the hem. I don't think I mentioned this in the last clip where I was cutting this, but just to make sure that you get this fold in the right place, if you're cutting it all in one piece, make sure you put a notch at both sides where your hems where the bottom of each pattern piece meets. This opening here is where your legs will come out, and this is also going to be where we put our binding. So if you haven't cut this in one piece, you will have an opening here where your binding is going to go, and you will also have an opening here at the bottom, which you can sew together now when you sew the side seams, or you can sew it together later. It really doesn't matter. Just do it whichever is easiest for you. But just know that this opening, if you have an opening across the bottom here, that is not where your binding is going to go. Your binding is going to go on this opening that's cut open, like I said, 2 or 3 inches from the fold line. Now I'm just going to go sew my side seams and my shoulder seams, and then I'll serge those all off, and then we can tackle this binding situation. Okay, so here we are at the front of our dress, and this is our binding. I have 2 of these. So I altered my dress a little bit. I took the pattern in 1.5 inches onto the front and 1.5 inches on the back. That means that the total width of my dress is going to be 6 inches smaller. And really, I just did that to accommodate the width of the fabric that I had, and knowing that this is an oversized dress, it's not going to make much difference in the fit. But what it does make a difference in is this slit. So I tried to accommodate for that and make my slit a little bit bigger, because I lost some of the width when I cut that out. I don't know. I wasn't, being the mathematician that I am, I don't know how close I got. It's fine. Whatever it is, it doesn't really matter. I don't think how big your slit is going to be. The point, though, is that I then had to alter my binding strips because they were way too long for the opening that I have. That is probably because I altered my dress pattern. However, when I was looking at the original pattern, it did look like these binding strips are going to be way too big. So I could be totally wrong about that. I didn't actually measure it. It just looked like that. So just before you start putting your binding on, double check to make sure that you have the right length. So I cut mine the exact same length as my opening plus 5/8 of an inch on each side. So it's the length of your opening plus, I think that's 1 1/4 inch to make the 5/8 of an inch seam allowance on both sides. So the way they tell you to do this is to attach one side, fold that under, and then attach the other side and sort of put this, like stick this side in here. I don't know, that seems really confusing to me. And to be honest with you, I'm not even sure that that's what the instruction said. That's just the best I could make of it. So what I am going to do, and what I recommend until further notice, is make your binding strips into a tube. So we put a 5/8 inch seam allowance on these. I'm gonna sew these 2 pieces together at 5/8 of an inch on both sides. And then on the dress, I'm actually going to put a little bit of fusible interfacing at each corner, because I suspect we're going to have to clip into that to get these to lay properly. Okay, so I have my binding piece sewn together on the short end, so it's one big long tube. And this is my opening. I have it laid around my opening. This is the right side of my dress. Right side of my binding is facing the dress. Oh, and you can see I press my binding in half lengthwise all the way around, just so when we go to fold it under, it'll already be ready for us. Okay, so this is our hole, our slit. And you can see how I have my binding laying all the way around the hole. However, I have only pinned one side from one corner to the other. And I'm going to sew this side first. And I guess I'll just use a 5/8 inch seam allowance. I don't really know what it is, but that's fine. And you can see there where I have my interfacing. So I've lined up my seam right with that corner, and that's where my pin is. And I'm going to go exactly 5/8 of an inch from here all the way to the other end, and then we'll tackle the other side. Okay, so this is our binding sewn to one side, and it looks like I have a little wrinkle. I'm gonna have to go back and get that out. We'll deal with that later. I sewed it to the bottom part first, but it doesn't matter if you do the bottom section or the top section first. What does matter is this. Let's get some of these threads out of the way. So you can see where I have it sewn down here on the inside. And it's pretty easy to see. It's easier to see on the inside because I have that interfacing. And because we started right at that corner and went around at 5/8, it was like this, but when you lay it like this, it's gonna look like a little, almost like a little corner there. And in order to get this to lay flat so we can do the other side, we're gonna wanna slit right into that corner on both sides. Okay, now this is gonna lay much more flat. It's not gonna be even right here because that's part of the slash. That's fine. It's all gonna be enclosed anyway. But now you can see we can get this side to lay flat. Just like that. Now, we clipped right to this point. We're gonna wanna sew right to that point. We wanna make sure we meet that when we come around to that, when we sew this other side. We're gonna wanna start at the stitching point on that side, and we're gonna wanna end right here where that stitching from the other side ends. That way we won't have any little gaping holes on the sides or anything. Okay, now we're just gonna go do the same thing we did to the other side. It's just gonna be 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Just remember, this, of course I'm using black because that's the most difficult. But you can see where my stitching stopped right here from before. So I'm gonna start there and I'm gonna go all the way down until I meet this other side. I'm gonna end right there where I stopped on the other side. All right, guys, so here's what we have so far. I have my binding attached to the outside all the way around now to the slash in my dress. And here's what it looks like on the inside. I will say this is not my favorite look on the inside. I think but it's not bad. I mean, you can see where I slashed into the corners to get that to lay flat. And it looks like a pretty decent curve there. It's fine. This interfacing, I'm afraid is going to show a little bit, but I guess I'm just going to have to live with that. It's not going to show on the outside, obviously. Okay, so now really all we have to do, I'm going to turn this inside out. All right, so now all we have to do is fold this along our fold line and stitch it down. Now I'm using jersey for my binding, so I'm probably not going to do anything to this edge. I might serge it and then stitch it down. If you are using something that ravels, obviously you're going to need to finish this raw edge in your preferred method. So I think going this way around, oops, I'm doing this the wrong way. So it's going to be like this, right? You want to make sure it goes over that seam line. And we're going to stitch in the ditch all the way around. You know, for other options, so I said before that the instructions said if you're making this out of a knit to make this band longer or wider. I didn't understand. I went back and looked at the picture, and what they are saying to do is to make this piece, it's 3 inches in the pattern. They're saying to make this 5 inches, and then you just sew it on like this and let it hang down. That's what it looks like in the picture. Anyway, in this case, I'm not going to do that because this edge I do not like, and I want to be sure that is covered. My fabric is really gauzy, and it frays a lot. So anyways, you guys can see then it's just going to go, we're just going to fold that over and stitch it down all the way around. And then I'll just come back and go over anything else I did here. Okay, just in case, whoops. Just in case there's any confusion about what was going on here. There's the top, the neckline, obviously. We'll start there. So the neckline on this seemed really small, and I thought originally I should just cut it down. I did not cut it down. I waited until I got the whole thing together, and then I tried it on. It was too small. I cut the neck down by 1/2 inch all the way around, and then I sewed on, I used a ribbed, well, actually not really ribbed, it's just a linen jersey fabric for my neck binding, and I use a 1 inch, this part is 1 inch, and I use a 3/8 inch seam allowance on the binding and on the dress, obviously. And the neck is still, I mean, it goes over my head fine now, but it's still close around the neck, which I like. The pattern gives you options and or instructions for making the sleeves longer, but that really involves just drawing your pattern out an extra 6 inches. My pattern, as I said before, my fabric wasn't wide enough for that. She does give you pattern pieces to make the sleeves separately, and I could have actually done that, but I hadn't decided whether or not I wanted to make it long sleeve or short sleeve, so it doesn't really matter. I really like I use the same black linen jersey to make really long cuffs, which I will fold up like this. They're doubled. And I really like those. And then here is the bottom. So when you cut the pattern, as we did, with in one piece, right? So there was the bottom of our front piece and the bottom of our back piece were butted up against each other. And that would be right here at the fold. Or if you didn't do it that way, you would have a seam here. This is actually the opening where your leg goes. It's a big slash in the front of the dress. And I bound mine with this linen jersey. So that's what it looks like from the front now. That's what it looks like from the back. I mean, you can see a little of my interfacing on the inside. But like I said, it is on the inside and nobody's really going to see that. A little more on that side. But just be aware of that. You may want to use a smaller piece of interfacing. I do think you're really going to want one there, though, because that could really easily split open. This is like my version of a sweatshirt. I wasn't too sure about it when I started, I have to be honest with you, but I really, really like it. Okay, guys, so short and sweet this week. I really don't have anything else to tell you guys. I am determined to get my Gia done for next week. I will also hopefully have my Capitola pants to show you next week. And if I have any luck at all, maybe I'll be able to crank out a couple of other things, and we'll have a few more things to talk about next week. So that's it for this week. Thank you again so much for watching. I really do appreciate it, and I look forward to seeing you all again next Thursday.